Hello there, teachers. On behalf of the Walt Disney World County Public Schools, we want to say welcome and congratulations for becoming a part of the DWPS family and can't wait for you to start the new school year with us. My name is Isabel Jimenez, and in this presentation, my job is to inform you all about some rules and regulations that pertain to education and that are currently facing schools, teachers, and students alike. That way, you will be able to have a nice, smooth start to your career as an educator. Today, to start off, we will be going over school personnel and school district liability. The courts have always held up the view that professional educators like yourselves are acting in place of parents, supervising students under your care and ensuring to the greatest extent possible that they are safe at all times. That way, it provides parents reasonable assurance that their children are safe while under the supervision of responsible professional adults. When it comes to liability of school personnel, in certain situations, they may be held individually liable for their actions that result in injury to a student. Individual liability will not usually occur unless the plaintiff or person bringing the case against the school employee can demonstrate that they clearly violated an established law and that they exhibited a reckless disregard for the rights to the plaintiff. Liability involving school personnel falls into two categories: intentional and unintentional torts. Intentional torts such as assault, battery, libel, slander, defamation, false arrest, malicious prosecution, and invasion of privacy require proof of intent or willfulness, whereas an unintentional tort, such as simple negligence, does not require such proof of intent or willfulness. In each case, liability charges may be sustained if the facts reveal that school personnel acted improperly or failed to act appropriately in situations involving students. Some examples could be hitting, pushing, shoving a student, spreading harmful gossip about others in the workplace, and releasing private information and records about a student without parental consent, not paying attention when students are having indoor or outdoor recess. But some examples that are appropriate behaviors are like high-fiving, giving someone a tap on the shoulder if you'd like to get their attention, sharing encouraging accomplishments about others with colleagues, or sharing classroom accomplishments with others, and doing 1 or 2 rotations around the playground to make sure children are using the equipment properly so no one could potentially injure themselves. When it comes to protecting the rights of students, a court case that dealt with individual liability is Carey versus Piffus, where 2 students were suspended for 20 days because one was smoking marijuana during school hours on property, and the other was wearing an earring to encourage gang activity in the school. How did the courts rule? The courts ruled that these students had been suspended in violation of their 14th Amendment. Administration should have known that suspending a student for that long without a hearing violated the student's right to due process of law, therefore making school officials liable for willfully violating their constitutional rights. Another court case that dealt with individual liability was in Wood versus Strickland. This case involved 3 female high school students, all 16-year-old sophomores. All 3 girls admitted mixing alcohol into soda pop punch, bringing it to a school function, and serving the mixture. Apparently, parents and teachers didn't even notice. After the students gave a confession, though, there was a Board of Education meeting held without the students or their parents present and decided to expel the girls for the remainder of the school year. But the court ruled that school board members were to be held individually liable for damages under Section 1983 of the Civil Rights Act of 1871 because they violate and showed a reckless disregard for constitutional rights of the students. For the next topic, we will go over defenses against defamation. When it comes to mental distress, charges usually arise when someone shows that their conduct exceeds the acceptable boundaries of decency. This is a form of liability that creates mental anguish and is very serious. School personnel may be charged with mental distress if there is evidence that their behavior or conduct calculated to cause serious emotional distress for students. School personnel typically are charged with inflicting emotional distress when they are unreasonable and unorthodox methods of discipline designed to embarrass students or cause them to be ridiculed or humiliated in the presence of their peers. Some examples of this awful behavior can be punishing students by requiring them to walk around the building with books on their heads, standing for long periods of time with one foot raised, standing and facing the corner of the room, placing students in a locked closet, or making a student write down repeated amount of times degrading phrases of one's self-worth. These actions that may cause mental distress and that may prove difficult to defend as reasonable actions. If a student has a behavioral issue that needs discipline, there are more loving ways to address the issue in hopes to correct the behavior, such as talking to the student privately and not in front of the classroom, calling their parents or guardians, having the school behavioral team come in and deal with the issue, or having a parent-teacher conference. An example of a court case that dealt with defenses against defamation is Gordon versus Oak Park District Number 97, which involved a verbal lashing administered to a student by the teacher. The Illinois Appellate Court held that such action by the teacher did not result in the teachers being held liable. The court recognized that within the broad delegation of parental authority, a teacher has the right to verbally chastise a student. The teacher, however, may be held liable if the evidence reveals that there was an intentional act committed with the intent to humiliate or degrade when it is accompanied by proof of malice. Another example of a court case that dealt with defenses against defamation was in the Celestine versus Lafayette Parish School Board case. An educator required students to write a vulgar word 1,000 times in the presence of their classmates as a disciplinary measure for just saying the word. The court had the teacher dismissed when it was determined that poor judgment and lack of educational purpose was established. Teachers, when disciplining a child, the point is to help fix the issue at hand with the utmost respect for that student individually. Always remember that they are people too, no matter how small they may be. The next topic I'll be going over is proper instruction in student safety. Teachers have a legal duty to instruct students on the proper use of equipment and materials in laboratories. In addition, teachers must, to the greatest extent possible, provide sufficient supervision to ensure that students are following their instructions to prevent possible injuries. Some bad examples of this could be if you're teaching a younger grade, like elementary school, assuming that students know how to use playground equipment, assuming that in PE, students know how to do all the exercises and warm-up stretches, leaving young students to their own devices with harmful chemicals, and letting children share food with one another. Ways to help avoid these potential hazardous scenarios is, before you go out to the playground, for recess, go over the playground rules. Properly demonstrate how to perform all exercises and warm-up stretches if you're teaching physical education, which is more susceptible to potential injury for students. Making sure students are wearing proper clothing during science experiments and that you are observing them at all times. And making sure that there is no food sharing policy in the classroom. And if for whatever reason you would like to try to incorporate food into a lesson plan, please have parental approval before doing so and accommodate the students who cannot participate. An example of a case that dealt with proper instruction in student safety is in Izard versus Hickory City Board of Education. A shop teacher was relieved of liability when the evidence revealed that he had provided proper instruction in the use of a power saw in a shop class. A student lost several fingers when he used a saw improperly by failing to follow instruction provided by the teacher, who had given detailed instructions in the use of the machine. In fact, the teacher spent more than 20 minutes demonstrating the proper use of the saw. The court concluded that the teacher's actions were not the proximate cause of the student's injury. Another example of a case that dealt with proper instruction and student safety was in DiBartolo versus Metropolitan School District of Washington Township, when a teacher was held liable for failure to properly instruct physical education students on proper techniques involving various exercise routines. A 6th grade student was injured when she attempted to vertical jump that resulted in her colliding with a wall. Based on the evidence, the teacher failed to demonstrate how the vertical jump should be performed. In addition, she failed to provide proper directions regarding the particular exercise. The teacher's actions was the proximate cause of the student's injury. Schools are supposed to be a safe haven where children can learn and have fun learning inside and outside the classroom. As educators, please make sure that before doing any activity, that students are fully prepared to take on the task and that nothing is left in the dark to leave for personal interpretation. In our final topic in the school personnel and school district liability presentation, we will be going over educational malpractice. For the past several years now, educational malpractice has emerged as a very big threat to educators. Parents are increasingly trying to pursue legal action on behalf of their children's education, alleging that teachers were either negligent or incapable of providing quality instruction and proper placement and classification of their children. In these cases, students have charged that they have suffered academic injury by being denied the full benefits of a proper education. Education malpractice generally is considered to be an unprofessional conduct or a lack of sufficient skill in the performances of professional duties. It represents a new kind of injury to the students. This new type of injury is not a physical one, but an emotional one, and a psychological one, or educational, resulting from poor teaching, improper placement, or inappropriate testing procedures. Although numerous educational malpractice suits have been filed in the past, to date, no such case has been won by parents or students. However, with the emergence of school-based management, national teaching standards, greater teaching accountability, and emphasis on professionalism in education, the prospect of a successful malpractice challenge is greatly heightened. There is little doubt that somewhere in the foreseeable future, a malpractice suit will be won by a student who has suffered academic injury. An example of the case that dealt with educational malpractice was in Peter W. versus San Francisco Unified School District. The parents of Peter filed suit against the San Francisco Unified School District, its agents, and its employees. The suit alleges intentional misinterpretation, negligence, and a violation of statutory and constitutional duties owed to students and parents. The defendant's school district was charged with negligently failing to use reasonable care and failing to have the degree of professional skills required of an ordinary educator under the same circumstances. After high school graduation, Peter was not able to read about a 5th grade level and had systematically been promoted each year, and teachers had told the parents he was performing at or near grade level. The court decided in favor of the school district on public policy considerations. And finally, the last case we will be looking into today is the Hoffman versus Board of Education. The court held for the student, stating that he had experienced diminished intellectual development and psychological injury as a result of inappropriate placement in his school. The courts ruled that the plaintiff has failed to establish that the school board had breached its duty, and such a cause of action should not, as a matter of public policy, be entertained by the courts of New York. However, this position by the courts will not deter future malpractice threats. Increasingly, parents will be inclined to seek damages for injury that they conclude has resulted from poor teaching, particularly when educators have a legal duty to provide competent instruction. So educators, this is why it is so important you try your best to always give your best to your students in everything you do. On behalf of Walt Disney World County Public Schools, we just wanted to say welcome to the family, and we hope you have a wonderful first year here at our school district, and we are 100% sure that you will fulfill all of the guidelines that we have just talked about, and I hope you enjoyed this presentation, and I hope you have a magical day.